Most retailers say customer experience is their priority, but very few actually invest in it properly.
Fully loaded. Agree, 100%. We need to stop talking the talk without walking the walk here. Most retailers, as you say, do say that.
Welcome to Still Loading, the podcast where people in marketing, e-commerce and retail tell the truth about what it actually takes. But before I introduce today's guest, I want to say something that I don't think I've said on this show yet, and it's about why the show exists at all. A while back, I was introduced as a guest on someone else's podcast, and somewhere in that conversation, the interviewer told me in her very direct, very warm, very Melissa way that I should be doing this myself and that I had something to say and I should just go ahead, go out and say it. Now, I'd been thinking about starting a podcast for a while, but thinking about something and actually doing it are two very different things. And that conversation was one of the moments that really moved me from thinking about it and planning it to actually going ahead and actioning it and getting it launched. So it feels right, and honestly a bit of full circle that Melissa's sitting here with me having this conversation today. So my guest is a retail consultant, trainer, lecturer, conference chair, event MC, Rethink Retail's top retail expert 3 years running, and the host of award-winning Retail Tea Break podcast, where she's interviewed over 150 people in the retail industry, and fortunately for me, I was one of them. I'm going to let Melissa do the rest. Melissa, welcome to Still Loading, and thank you genuinely for being part of why this show exists. In your own words, who are you and what do you do?
Goodness, what an introduction. That's actually made me quite emotional. It was a delight to have you on the Retail Tea Break podcast, and I'm glad I've given you the push to start your journey. So as you say, my name is Melissa Moore. The day job, and I think a lot of people don't realise this, the day job is as a retail educator, a retail trainer in the industry. Gosh, I've been in the industry almost 30 years. And of course, host of the award-winning Retail Tea Break podcast. So delighted to be with you this afternoon.
And as always, we start every conversation the same way. So Melissa, what was your first click?
You know what, I've been thinking about this, and I think because of an awful lot of like golden quarter conversations I've been having over the last 2 weeks, I think first click almost wasn't electronic or technical, the Argos catalogue. Like back in the day, I think the idea of having this shop literally in a catalogue as I'm sitting on the floor at home, as a small child, the wow moments of seeing all these different products, the toys specifically, I think, certainly at an early age is the one thing that I think jumps to mind for me. So yes, my click isn't an electronic one, but actually it was so profound. Obviously, I've been in the industry, as I said, almost 30 years. So yeah, having all those products, knowing that they were there to be bought, being enticed from a marketing perspective, that Argos catalogue back in the 80s was an absolute genius idea.
I remember going to Argos as a child it felt to me like a huge day out, just going, looking through those catalogues, and then you have that tiny sheet of paper where you're just writing
and the
codes.
Little pencil.
Yep, and that little pencil, and just make a massive list of everything that I want. It was great times. You've started at Brown Thomas and managing the cosmetics hall as well. Then Woody's DIY, then nearly 7 years at Ikea. And that's an interesting arc. What was retail actually like for you when in those early years, sort of before you had the name for what you were good at?
Do you know what? I almost think it continues that Argos story. I was excited, like that wow moment. You've got the pencil, the piece of paper there, you're walking up and magically, like these goods appear from behind the scenes. It was this magical journey. And actually, my very first kind of proper retail role was for Laura Ashley, because even as a child, I'd gone into the store with my mother. And I remember vividly being wowed by like this perfect looking store. It was bright, it was airy, if you want to call it that. A beautiful product, lovely. And I'm going to call them girls because again I would have been a youngster at the time, but lovely people serving. So actually I then went on to work for the company for a couple of years while I was at university. So then Laura Ashley jumping kind of almost around the place, and I'm actually really proud of that I've gone from that mid-range high street luxury almost to high-end luxury with Brown Thomas onto that incredible volume of Ikea. And that was Ikea in Ballymun in Dublin, which at the time was the only one obviously on the island. And it was bananas. Like you take a bank holiday in an Ikea store, they're crazy anyway. But those early days while we were almost finding our feet in Ballymun were absolutely nuts. But all along that journey, it didn't matter who I was working for, I was learning. I was learning from the strategic perspective. I was learning from the business perspective, but probably more importantly than anything, and what feeds the journey I'm on now, the people around me, for the good and the bad, watching when people performed well. Why did they perform well? How can I help them perform even better? And I loved it. I loved that interaction with the customer on the shop floor. I love the interaction with the people. And I think all of those things, now that I've had an opportunity over the last 7 years to step back, they've all fed this new journey that I'm on.
And I want to double click into something you said there. So you mentioned growing up, going to Laura Ashley with your mother, and the people were lovely. So you kind of touched on customer service there. What is it that the staff did that resonated with you and really stuck with you until now?
It's a lot of the things that I suppose I teach nowadays: warm, welcoming, thoughtful in the respect that, like, you really know your product. Therefore, you can match the needs or the wants of that customer in front of you with the product that you have in house. And of course, then that kind of leans on to, well, if I don't have this today,
Yeah,
what can I recommend? How can I shimmy them sideways and still get them leaving with a bag full of goodies that they love that will keep them coming back? And I think that's definitely the learning journey I've been on. It's all well and good selling something today. That selling something today isn't actually going to make, the business any money. It's keeping that customer coming back time and time again. It's rewarding for you as someone working on the shop floor, but it's really rewarding both for the business, but more importantly, the customer. If you can keep them happy, if you can keep them enticed, that you're selling in a trustworthy way, that you are believable and honest about your product recommendations, everybody wins.
absolutely. And you also mentioned, spending a lot of time in IKEA, and IKEA is famous for its culture. It's like a cult, and it's in the best way possible. What did 6.5 years there teach you that you still use every single day?
Do you know, it is literally that idea of saying hello. And I know that might sound really odd to people kind of listening and watching, but I genuinely don't think I ever walked by anyone without saying hello or good morning, or just, smiling at them. You recognized everyone. And do you know what? It was an expectation.
Mm,
People in IKEA are recruited towards their values. They're brought in for very specific reasons. So if you
interesting.
can't be bothered to smile or say hello, you're in the wrong business. Like, it is a really fast moving business. You need the support of those around you. You need to step up as well. But those cheeky little things like saying hello, which again, in some retailers, and you and I have both worked, in the industry for a while, it isn't always the norm. So therefore, that's the big takeaway I had. It was definitely a people first business, phenomenal actual, retail kind of logistical aspect, product, all of that jazz. But the real basics there of treating people internally with respect, with values, I think pays off for them even today.
100%. And I think the piece around values, there's probably two levels to it. So the first is people first for your staff members. And there's people first in terms of what you mentioned IKEA do in terms of letting you bring your persona and personality out to the customer. And how do you feel you were able to bring the two together? Because they can be quite different and often they can conflict. It's not an easy balance to strike.
And you know what? It's not an easy job. They're long hours. They are exhausting, especially if it is a
Exactly.
crazy busy, Saturday or a bank holiday. But I'm kind of reminded of something even, Archie Norman said, as chairman of Marks and Spencer. It's not an easy job. But you know what? If you enjoy what you do and you work hard for businesses like IKEA or Marks and Spencer, it's rewarding because everybody then actually pulls their weight. And again, it's an awful way to be if you're in a team and you're the only one that you feel is doing anything. And Sally in the corner there is getting away with everything because she's not doing anything. That leads to friction. And I guarantee you the customer can see that. So again, a happy workforce definitely leads to happy customers. And if they're happy, they're going to keep spending. So it seems like a really obvious thing, but I still think today it's really hard for some retailers to accept that the internal level of service has to start with the people. That's where the customer service starts. And then it bleeds out to the shop floor and the actual customers themselves.
There's something really profound in there in what you said. There's You can't stop work from being stressful, and you can't stop
Yeah.
the day from being really difficult and a long day and really busy. But what you can do is control your response to that. And there's real, impressive growth in being able to maintain that persona and the warmth with the customer throughout, despite what was going on. You might have the worst conversation with a really angry and frustrated customer. The moment they move on and leave, you kind of restart, and then you speak to the next customer with the most warm and welcoming voice. There's a lot of power in that, and there's a lot of growth to be able to achieve that. Do you feel that's something that you sort of born with, that you were able to adapt to quite quickly, or did you have to sort of learn that through ups and downs and go through the motions to get there?
Absolutely. I think I'm definitely a people person. Like I love the chats, I love the conversations. The podcast has taught me to listen, and that is a huge skill. I know I'm not a great listener, but it's a huge skill over the last 5 years that I've definitely built upon. So being a people person is one thing, but actually leading and being a people person from the front or someone to look up to is completely different. Because as you say, if you've just had a really cranky conversation with a customer that's not happy because something's gone wrong, if you can then just own it and calmly move on and keep treating your own team with a huge amount of respect, that's where real leadership and really, really strong kind of governance comes into play in retail. Because again, it's not something that's out there everywhere. You might be as nice as pie to your customers, but if you can't be like that with your teams, that's where the retention starts to kind of drift away. And again, we know we've got a people problem right now in the industry. We're not recruiting the right people because they don't want to come and work for us. We're not retaining our people because an awful lot of them want to leave the industry because of the hours, the
Yeah.
pay, all of those things. But if you can have respect for your people and for yourself, again, I think then you'll surround yourself with the right people. They will want to work for you and they'll want to work hard as well.
100%. And it's something I've always said to myself whenever I've managed people is I can't stop a recruiter from emailing them and offering them 15, 20, 30 grand more than what they're getting paid. But what I can do is make the decision to hand in the notice and walk away. A very difficult one because I always sit there and think, you know, that salary could be a big change, but will my manager look after me this way? Will my manager really value me? Will I be listened to and heard? And that feeling every single day, it overpowers the paycheck at the end of the month. And I think for many people, it's if I'm not respected and listened to at work, then perhaps the pay, is it really really worth it? So definitely something that leaders should think about. But one thing I really really wanted to dive into with yourself is after that powerful retail journey that you went through in 2019, you made the jump to finding the retail advisor. What happened that made 2019 the moment?
Let's just call a spade here. I went out on my own in September 2019. 6 months later, March 2020, I don't even need to tell you what happened then. So look, I'd left a job that frustrated me. I'd left a job that just wasn't right fit. It was a bad choice. I loved what I did. My people loved what I did, but it was an awful environment to be in. So walking away was the right idea. And in the background, actually, people were coming to me saying, look, my friend has a small shop, they've got an independent shop, but could you have a phone call with them? Could you have a coffee? So I kind of started to realize that actually there was an awful lot of independent retail store owners that didn't have anyone to go with. They couldn't afford the big four consultancy firms, nor should they. So I started to kind of realize that having a coffee or having a conversation, and then they'd tell other people they knew who had a store. So I kind of knew or realized, that there might be something in this. So when I finally went out on my own, it took off like a rocket. I'm not even going to lie. I had work lined up. I was enjoying it. But you know what? I was winging it. Let's be really honest. I was absolutely winging it. I had the thought process. I obviously had the background in the industry. I had the knowledge. I didn't have the business acumen. Like, I don't come from an entrepreneurial family. I didn't really know people that were entrepreneurs of service-based businesses back in the time. So September, October, November, absolutely fine. It was absolutely going brilliantly. I thought I'd made it. That was it. And even into kind of January and February, when I look back, I was delivering oodles of retail training for some really good companies. And then the March hit. And again, I'm not going to lie, vividly remember sitting on my sofa with a cup of tea and a whole pack of chocolate digestives going, what have I done? I've walked away from, a salary, a full-time salary, a pension. What am I going to do? And of course, I cried, I panicked for about 2 days. I got that out of my system. It was fabulous. And then I was like, right, what am I going to do? I know retail, but I don't understand how to run a business. I didn't really understand that I needed to have a proper offering or what I could offer and who my target customer was. So I spent the remainder of 2020 learning business skills. Now, bear in mind, I've got a master's in business. So I knew business, but knowing business and being an entrepreneur are two completely different things. So I literally went back to basics. I did the work that I suppose I talk to retailers about now. Who on earth was my customer? How was I going to find them? How are they going to find me? What did they want from me? I did all that boring stuff over those months, and I think it's paid off absolute dividends. So by the time we were into 2021, I was positioned to rock and roll. And I felt good about it. And I suppose to today, I still feel good about the fact I spent 8, 9 months doing the boring work. And that's even what I call it in the classroom: the research, the questioning, the phone calls, the Zoom meetings, all those things to try and figure out who was my customer, what is it they wanted from me, how was I going to provide it, how can I give long-term kind of satisfaction to them, and almost building that customer journey for me and what it looked like. Then came obviously the first website and so on and so forth. So it was a massive journey. I'm so grateful to have done it.
I love what you said there because a lot of times what stops people making that leap is the limiting belief of, I've never done this before. I don't think I've got it in me. I don't know business. I've not got the acumen. And you were able to overcome those limiting beliefs and actually go on and do this. But one thing that I don't think you've given yourself enough credit for in what you just said is you've gone and done this at a time when retail was almost non-existent during COVID. And so you're almost against all of the odds, right? How did that feel?
Do you know what? Retail's not going anywhere. And even, 2020, you would know better than I do, 2020, 2021, e-commerce was exploding. I still kind of felt, hang on a minute, the high street, the main streets, these small villages, the towns, they're not going to magically empty overnight. I knew enough independent businesses that had money in the bank, or they had enough kind of cash flow to keep themselves going. They cobbled together websites that they still needed support. So again, I don't know the techie stuff of websites, but I know people and I know product and I know customers. So I knew there was always going to be a need for that. But look, is my business today the same as it was back then? Hell no. I really do know what I focus on now and I'm good at it. But the other interesting thing I think about that 12-month period is LinkedIn. And I know this sounds really odd, but I am definitely, as with everything tech, and I definitely put social media into some of that, I am a stupidly late adopter to these things. So it's funny, people talk about having 20, 30,000 followers. I have nothing like it because literally 2020, 2021, I was reading what global retail people, so people in the Far East who were a little bit more ahead of us, especially when it came to e-commerce, I started to read people's posts. I started to read their articles that they were writing. And that was incredible. And I think that's definitely helped me become who I am today. I now have this incredible global reach. And that's not about a following. These are people like yourself that I know if I get a question in the classroom or someone comes to me, a CEO, and goes, I've no idea about this, I know I can connect them to the right person.
That's
That has
brilliant.
been hugely valuable. It really, really is.
And the other thing that I'd love to double click into is you went on and launched this business during COVID. And 2 years in, you were named Businesswoman of the Year for Emerging New Businesses in 2021. How did that happen?
That was really surreal. And you know what? Up on my bookshelf, just up here, I still have that award. Like, it means a huge amount.
Of course it does.
It's not that I needed validation because I knew I was helping people in the industry, but it is, look, it's a lovely thing. This year, back in January, I was nominated for a Vendor and Partnership Award for the podcast in New York. Same feeling. Oh my goodness, what have I done? And I think as a solopreneur, sometimes you've just got to stop and go, geez, you're on the right path. You're doing the right thing here, because I don't stop and celebrate. Most of us don't in this industry. You kind of move on to the next thing. And I love that. But yeah, it's lovely to be recognized. And it more than anything, I think it makes you go, okay, what have I done? Where am I going? It makes you slow down a bit and just be really grateful, I think, for all the people I've worked with as well.
That's amazing and well done. And, right, I do want to get into more of the meaty stuff that I brought you in to discuss. You've spent 27 years in retail on both sides, the shop floor and the advisory room, and you've sat across from over 150 people on your own podcast. So there's a lot of perspective, a lot of lessons to be learned from yourself, Melissa. Going into retail and customer experience, you've spent your career arguing that sensational services is the difference, not price, not product range, not footfall. An industry that's being battered by e-commerce growth, rising costs, and changing consumer behaviors. Do you still believe that as firmly as you did when you started?
100% basics. Basics, basics, basics. I don't care if you're an e-commerce business or you have stores. If you don't know who your customer is, if you don't know what they want, you don't have a business. So I am very much, and I bang on about this in the classroom and in training, you need to know your customer. You need to know where they're hanging out. You need to know what time of the day they're buying from you. It could be 2 a.m. because they're up feeding the baby. So if you don't know that stuff, I kind of don't see the point for retailers. And I know I've annoyed people in the past by saying that, but you don't have a business if you don't know who you're serving.
When it comes to knowing who your customer is, there's two ways brands can do that. So some brands go about saying, well, here's my ideal customer profile, and we're going to sit in a room and decide who we want to go after, what their hobbies and patterns are like and behaviors. Some businesses will go out and say, actually, let's see who's bought from us. Let's go survey them, maybe sit down with them and try to find out what their lifestyle is. What's your approach, and why do you recommend that specific approach?
My gut reaction to that is the latter. So definitely sit in a room with them, talk to them. But then marrying that in with the first approach you talked about, if you think you know who that is, when's the last time you did that bit of work? Literally for me, for my own business, that's done now at least once a year because what I do is so agile. The industry is so agile. So if you last looked at your customer persona back in 2021 after the big COVID kind of bash, there's absolutely no way your customer is the same today because, as you say, economy pressures, the way we buy has changed. Who they're buying could be different depending on the product that you sell. So that's why I think sitting with your customer physically, where possible, once a year is hugely important. And we see the big retail tech companies do that. They bring all their customers together, not just to have a jolly, but actually to figure out what are the problems, what are the issues. Okay, if 10 different people are saying the same thing, then we kind of realize what the issues are out there. And I think that is so much more valuable nowadays than the guesswork because there's still plenty of guesswork going on out there, even if brands and companies and retailers have the data, because they're not reading it and they're not focusing on it to then kind of bleed out to the rest of the companies.
And how will retailers continue to do this and validate who their customer is when customers are increasingly able to shop outside of the retailer's owned environment? So you've got TikTok Shop, you've now got agentic commerce. How can businesses go out and validate that?
This is where I think it's got to be a multi-channel approach. Like it's really funny. I still hear retailers talking about, physical stores versus e-commerce. Hang on a minute. Like when did that actually ever happen? So I think to answer your question, whether it's, live shopping on TikTok, whether it's kind of almost via Pinterest nowadays, because Pinterest boards are hugely influential on what people are buying and what they're coming to retailers for. Or, of course, you layer on the craziness of AI and what's coming next with that. You've got to be everywhere. And again, some people say, oh, that's too much. I can't be doing all things to all people. Go and find out where your customer is shopping for you, maybe your competition, if you have the resources to do that. But again, without it, what's the point? And why are you selling things when you're just almost, it's like throwing spaghetti at a wall. If you've ever cooked spaghetti, they used to say, just chuck it at the wall, see, does it stick? And then it's cooked. You're kind of doing that with your customer. So if you don't know which of the main channels they're coming to you on, if you don't know where your customer base that you thought you had that's now walked away, where they're shopping, then again, you have a real problem. I had an amazing couple of guys on a few weeks ago on the Retail Team podcast from Temu. Their Temu's like biggest sellers in the UK. And again, they said, if you don't know where your customer's gone, go and find out. It's ridiculous nowadays to think that, loyalty is not what it used to be. Customers are shopping everywhere. Yeah, there's a reason for it. So again, you have to do the boring work, as I call it. You've got to go and figure out where are they, what channels, who else are they buying, or if they're buying your product from a different channel, not direct from your website, why? So loads of things there. And again, I don't have the answers, but I'm like, you've got to do the homework yourself. And then again, continue to spread that through your brand, through your senior team, so that
Absolutely.
infiltrates into all the different departments.
It goes back to limiting beliefs that we spoke about earlier. Yeah, loyalty is not the same. Customers will go and buy and try newness, but then you can shift that paradigm a little bit and think about it as, well, actually, the good news is not many brands and retailers have cracked loyalty and they're not sticky enough to their customers. And so if I was to go and build a loyalty program that really sticks with the customer, then I'm onto something and my lifetime value is going to be astronomical. Therein lies an opportunity. So let's go and dive into it. Now, you've worked with retailers for a very long time, and what is the thing that most retailers are still consistently getting wrong about customer experience and the mistake that you see over and over again, regardless of the size of the retailer?
I think it is those foundational things. And I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record at this stage, but actually it is the customer. It simply continues to come back to that because if you don't know why they're shopping or where they're shopping, if you don't know their mission today, you can't serve them in the best possible way. So in the training room, for instance, I might say, I can't teach you to sell in one way because from the 10 different customers about to come through your door, much like the 10 different customers that are about to jump on your website, they're coming for a different reason. They might be buying for someone else. They might be buying a gift. They might need this like yesterday, this product. Some could wait a week. So unless you can figure out their shopping mission and why they're buying from you and therefore what they need, how can you personalize or hyper personalize that service? How can you know that they want delivery this afternoon or they're happy to wait a week or that price is really that differentiator? You don't know. So it really comes back to your kind of previous point that, how are you finding out about your customer? And this is the one thing that, again, I know I sound like a broken record about, but if you don't have that basic, if you don't understand why you're serving a need, or even if it's a want, if you're high end luxury, why? Because from that why comes everything to the product, the amount of time it takes to get that product to the customer, the price you're charging, how often they're buying, who they're recommending you to, the channels that they're shopping on. Everything escalates from there.
Throughout your interviews, how often do you find that when you're trying to get into the crux of the problem, that they come back and identify those fundamentals and have an honest conversation with you about why they've not figured out yet?
I think I've been really lucky that people tend to come on and be brutally honest because I think people have started to realize, much like you and I in the conversations we've had, that the honesty means other people start to nod their heads and go, oh
Yeah.
God, we're in the same position. Oh, crikey, it's not just us. Because again, you look on LinkedIn and it can be all shiny and happy. You go to industry events and everyone's smiling and everything's brilliant. It isn't. This industry is not okay. Now we're in a better place than we certainly were. But there's so much going on. And it's funny because the podcast is 5 years old next month, which is amazing. But I've spent the last 6, 7 weeks reading back through every single transcript of every single episode. And the interesting thing is the main kind of 3, 5 points keep coming up time and time again over the 5 years. And it's literally stuff we talked about, people being your growth strategy, not the product you're selling, your people, owning your customer relationship. And of course, their data. Now, the way we collect data and why we're doing what we're doing it has changed so much over those 5 years. But again, capturing the right data on them. Technology is amazing, but again, it can only be led upon when you've got those fundamentals right. Authenticity. And this has definitely been there over the 10 episodes. Much like people coming on to talk to me, if you're not authentic, especially now in the days of AI, your customer can see it. That's how we ruin a business is by either blatantly lying to them or trying to fool them. Even if you don't mean to, if we're not authentic, your customer knows it. But then the last big thing that's come out of the last 5 years, physical and digital, they are actually one relationship. It's not about one channel for people. Everyone nowadays, whether it's AI, whether it's TikTok live, as you said, whether it's physical or it's your website, we're all moving around because it's what we can do. So are you meeting your customer where they are as opposed to kind of where you decide you want to be? So huge learnings for me personally over those 5 years. But it's interesting. Those 5 themes keep coming up time and time again.
And why do you think physical and digital debate exists? And why does each team argue like the other is the enemy?
I'd love to know because at the end of the day, we need both, especially nowadays. And then you layer on, I think it's almost becoming, people think the third layer of AI, whereas actually really strong AI should be feeding into all of these things right now. Look, it's what our customers are doing. And most of them, to be honest, are now starting to look to ChatGPT for recommendations for a dress for the weekend or a present for a 4-year-old child. There's so much going on. And I wish, as you said, the fight wasn't there. Like at the end of the day, should you care where people are shopping once they're shopping with you, not your competition? Surely that should be the message from C-suite down, is it doesn't matter if I'm in a store and I'm looking at something, the touch and feel is there, but I am then going home to buy it because you've stupidly given 10% off online as opposed to buying in store. Like you've just driven your customer to go and buy online. But the concern is if you've driven them to buy online, what's stopping them jumping to your competition? So we don't help ourselves in this industry. And I still think that fight is there, but it's bizarre because we're definitely losing customers because of it.
And how much of a role does company structure play in creating that argument?
I don't know, because an awful lot of CEOs I've spoken to would be the first to say, look, I'm not the tech savvy, I'm not the AI savvy. I know what I know. It's great to kind of hear from people who do know and understand. But all these people have people below them, and that's technically what they
Yeah.
would be, who should know what they're at. So it would be great to think an awful lot of retail organizations out there have that transparency or have that safe space that people that really understand this stuff can speak up about it in the right way. And again, I know we both work for companies where it isn't the case, and that's frustrating because then you know full well that money is being spent in the wrong place, that strategically you're going in the wrong direction because people don't want you to speak up. And I think there's still an awful lot of that around, but I kind of hope the more we move forward, the more that people realize that if you bring your team on that journey with you, everybody wins.
And the reason why I ask that question is you often have a commercial team. This is brand side. You'll have a commercial team that will generally look after retail relationships. And then you'll have a digital team, which will look at D2C and e-com channels. And then you'll have a marketing team that will look at the paid media and all of that. And so digital sits in no man's land, so to speak, where we're neither seen as a commercial entity, but we are a commercial engine. And we actually feed the entire commercial engine of the business with data, first party data and the information and all of that and customer personas. And then neither are we in control of our destiny because the marketing, the customer acquisition, we know all the information, but someone else is controlling how we target and how we get those customers. And so we're going round in circles and using the longest route to finding that customer. And each team will have its own targets. And do you feel that those targets could potentially create the friction? Because I've got my own P&L and the commercial team have a P&L. And so I need to go from 2 million to 3 million. And if I don't, that's because your retailer has done a discount for 2 weeks period. And those 2 weeks were the most important 2 weeks, just so happens to be for my D2C. Is there a bit of a restructure that could break those barriers and say, actually, it's one and the same P&L, and there's different departments within that P&L, but whether you're 3 million or 2 million, as long as the entire business hits 10 million, then we're heading in the right direction. And by the way, this is our margin target. So whatever the mix looks like, we better go and hit it together.
Yes, full stop. Because you know what? This actually really frustrates me. I have been in physical stores where I have heard staff, senior people, talk about the fact they are frustrated, and I'm not going to swear, but they're annoyed that customers are wasting their time because they are coming in to look, to try on, or whatever it might be, and then they're going onto their phones and they're buying there because they want free delivery or whatever it might be. Who are they learning that from? Like, this stuff is so dangerous. And look, I'm lucky enough to be in stores an awful lot of my time. Look, like I would say to CEOs or C-suite, look what you've done. Look what your customers are hearing. Because for me, it's got to be relationship first. So whether that's between the brand and the customer, the relationship is more important than anything. Building that emotional connection equals longevity, equals loyalty. I don't care about your ROI experiment because that's what it is. These targets, that return on investment, those kind of stretch figures of 2 million to 3 million, like, does it matter? Which is exactly kind of your point there. It's the fact that surely if the whole business is growing and it's growing in the right direction and the margin's in the right place, surely that should be valued a lot more than if Jimmy, who runs ecom, has made more money this week because we happen to be on Black Friday. Our stores are quiet, yet Sally, that's running our main flagship store, has been absolutely beaten down the phone because she hasn't met her targets.
Yeah,
But actually, overall, the company is up. Surely
precisely.
that's what's more important. Because genuinely, the more this and it is nonsense, and again, I know CEOs get really annoyed with me when I say this, we are absolutely ruining relationships with our customers, and that is why they are
Precisely.
walking away, because money sitting in one pile and not in another is trickling down and they're hearing it. And that is appalling.
Absolutely. And you almost have a shopping list as a CEO that cannot be fulfilled, and you want it all to happen. So each one of your channels individually has to hit that target. And by the way, that target needs to be split by week and by month. Now, in week, you need to be hitting your target, and there needs to be a pretty darn good reason if you're not. Oh, and you can't use trading mechanics all the time because we don't want customers to get used to trade mechanics. So we need to grow a lot faster, but we're not going to discount. And we are probably going to see discount in retail. We're not going to follow that. And you go, okay,
But
we want the
then the
growth.
narky conversations happen. Sorry to butt in there,
Exactly.
but actually, full well the narky conversations start happening. What are marketing doing? How are they pushing footfall? How are
Precisely.
they pushing people online? That last campaign was rubbish, and so on and so forth. And this is where that negative internal level of service starts to kind of explode. And again, I guarantee you, the customers see it happening. So it's wrong on every level. And I know a lot of people say, oh, it's easy to, you sit there, you don't work for a retailer anymore. But my goodness, I see it. And we're aware as an industry of brands and companies where this infighting is almost epidemic. It's
How
at
can you tell?
crazy proportions.
So you've mentioned that a couple of
Because
times. You said the customer sees it and you see it. How can you tell? How do you look at a brand from the outside and go, there's something going on in there that's not right?
Because do you know what, you see enough. So from a physical perspective, you can feel it walking in the shop floor. If like the conversations I've heard, or people are being a bit narky with each other, they're being pushed. And also people talk more and more,
Yeah.
more and more and more, and we're quite open. And a lot of social media out there. So you start reading between the lines, and you're like, this isn't right. Why is someone all of a sudden thrown a promotion out there? And you go and have a quick look at the competition. And you're like, oh, that's why. So they haven't
Yeah.
planned
Yeah.
this. They've done it. Probably haven't costed it properly. It's a really poor way to run a business. So, look, I know it's easy for me to say, but really we should be looking at across the business a lot more than, as you said, those pockets of money in silos, because it's damaging brands and it's damaging the business. And customers are walking away regardless because you're not focused on them. You're focused on Johnny making that million this week because it's Black Friday and that's what he has to do. But actually, the customer's not interested at all.
Moving into the future of retail, another accolade of yours is you're named as a top retail expert 3 years running, and you're on the Retail Technology Innovation Hub top 100 influencers list. What's the technology development in retail right now that you think is genuinely going to be transformative, not a hype, absolute reality?
Such a tough question because I'm about to probably annoy the whole world of tech. So, do you know what? I'm probably going to be a bit wishy-washy with this answer. So, apologies to everyone. I think it would be remiss of me not to mention AI. And again, as someone that's a late adopter myself, as someone that definitely doesn't understand the nuances of all of it, but I look to the industry or certain people in the industry, certain companies right now to see what's happening. So, New York NRF every year, hugely important, I think, for me to see, where are we headed? What's going on? And we know AI operationally has been used throughout retail now. The independents are using it, the small retailers are using it, and they're loving it because the AI is doing all the boring stuff for us, which is brilliant. But
Absolutely.
of course, discoverability now, whether it's with the big brands or it's moving forward, I've talked a lot about golden quarter. We know this is coming more and more now that people are almost building their shopping list. So you start to link that with the idea, for me, AI shopping for you, like it's coming. And I say it's coming because I've not tried it. I know it's available out there for certain people and certain platforms, but There's so much excitement to come with a lot of this. But again, I'm like, you can only do that and you can only look forward if the basics are right. But I think it's been revolutionary. It would be remiss of me not to kind of mention it because it is the one main thing everybody is talking about. And I suppose rightly so.
Yeah, it is pretty much reshaping everything in the world of retail, from personalization, inventory management, customer service, visual merchandising. Where is it making a difference in physical retail right now? And where is it sort of, where is there still more promise than reality?
Two parts to this. I suppose, as I said, it's taken all the boring stuff away, which is great. So,
Yeah.
forecasting, even at a store level, productivity. So the HR perspective as well, which not too many people talk about, but that whole scheduling idea. But again, for me, it's only ever as good as the data plugged into it. So I think that for me is the fix. It's honing in on now, almost polishing what's
Yeah.
been there for an awful lot of mainstream retailers or even independents for the last kind of year, 18 months. Like I know AI has been around for 10 years and most retailers, especially the big ones, have been working with the big tech guys for at least the last five. But actually for the everyday retailer, it's still fairly new, and
Yeah.
plugging it into the right system in the right way and making sure that everyone is using it at the same capacity or in the right way and that they're using it safely. I think we're still almost a lot of us in that phase of safety first, clarity behind it, allowing our people to use it and using it the right way. So I think there's an awful lot to be done there. But look, I think there's exciting kind of journeys ahead for a lot of retailers when it comes to showing up properly, layering AI now on top of all those channels. I think that's the exciting thing that's coming. Hopefully, hopefully it does a good job, especially on the shop floor,
Yeah.
because if I can use AI to do all the boring stuff, I can spend more time with my customer, which is exactly what I want to do.
100%. And what we're going to do now is we're going to play a fun game. It is called Still Loading, Fully Loaded. So
Uh-oh.
I'm going to give you a statement and you'll instantly tell me still loading, meaning you're genuinely not sure, or fully loaded, which means you've got a strong take on that statement. One sentence to tell me why you're not sure, or one sentence to tell me what your stance is. So no long answers, and the pace is the point here. Are we ready?
Yes.
Amazing. Let's go. So, first statement: physical retail is more important to the future of e-commerce than most digital brands realize.
Oh, that's a hard one to start with. Fully loaded. Lads, physical retail isn't going anywhere. It's definitely always going to be there. And I do think it's more important. Sorry.
Most retailers say customer experience is their priority, but very few actually invest in it properly.
Fully loaded. Agree. 100%. We need to stop talking the talk without walking the walk here. Most retailers, as you say, do say that. Then
AI will transform the in-store experience within 5 years in ways most retailers aren't preparing for.
still loading. I don't know. Because again, depending on the type of retailer, do we really need it?
Interesting. The best retailers right now are the ones who never forgot what made retail great in the first place.
Fully loaded. I love that statement. Yeah, completely agree. The best retailers out there have those basics in place and have built upon them for sure.
And the final statement is podcasting has made you a better advisor than any course or qualification you have ever done.
Oh, fully loaded. I'm so grateful for the Retail Tea Break podcast to introduce me to amazing people like you. But also, yeah, it's made me learn to listen.
What is it about the listening piece that really transformed your ability to be a great advisor?
Do you know what? I talk about listening or communication in my training so much because it's so important. Now, whether you're online talking to the customer and being able to read them in that respect, or whether it's in store, that ability to question, to ask the right questions, but then really listen properly to the answers. That's what makes retail exciting because you can then ensure that you're serving that customer in the best possible way. And of course, if you do that, they are more than likely to have built an emotional connection with you, and therefore they're going to keep coming back. So it really wraps everything, the best of retail, it wraps it all up, and it will keep customers coming back to you. I've absolutely no doubt.
And what advice would you give to young entrepreneurs or people in retail at the moment?
Well, first of all, DM me. But, again, that's the reason I teach. I am so proud of the work I do with our future retail leaders because I wish there'd been someone like me as I was coming up through the ranks. And I think we all need that. And it's not even about being a mentor. It's about going to someone, can I have 15 minutes? Here's two questions I want to ask you. Can I wash them through? Of course you can. I think it's so important. Our industry has a huge issue, as I said to you, with retention, with people leaving. There are some incredible roles out there. You don't have to leave the industry and leave behind all your knowledge. Maybe it's a matter of moving sideways. Maybe it's a matter of doing something different. But genuinely, I say to people, don't leave the industry because you've had one bad experience. There is definitely something better out there for you.
And it's often those bad experiences that build you up in the first place. The best thing to do is own them, take the learnings from them, and go and fly with those learnings. Melissa, the last question, the one we end every episode with, what is it that is still loading for you right now?
I suppose in the interim, like we're straight into golden quarter. It's all I've been talking about the last few weeks. So we're immediately into training really hard with some incredible teams now for that. Of course, straight after that, then we're into NRF in New York, and that's always bigger picture, whether it's what's coming up in tech or kind of what's coming up. I really across the industry, but kind of straight away, as I said, 5th birthday of the Retail Tea Break podcast in September. I am incredibly proud of what we've built with the podcast and the conversations we've had. So long may that continue. Delighted that you've started this as well. And I encourage people, if there's something you love, something you do, especially when it comes to this industry, go after it and share it, because this is what raises the bar for the industry. It's not one person or one brand going off on their own and doing something. We need to elevate and raise the standard across the industry. And it's by having these conversations that it really, really helps.
And that is a perfect place to land. From the cosmetics hall at Brown Thomas to the rooms of Ikea to lecture halls of Galway. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, you built a platform that gave a lot of people, including myself, permission to go and do the things that they were putting off for some time. Thank you for being honest today. Really enjoyed the conversation. Where can people find you or the Retail Tea Break podcast if they wanted to have this conversation with you?
So you can find me, Melissa Moore, on LinkedIn. You can always find the Retail Tea Break podcast on all of your favorite podcast platforms. There is a page there on LinkedIn as well, and over on Instagram. But do listen on Apple or Spotify or any of that jazz, or of course over on YouTube.
Amazing. We'll add everything in this show's notes, and we'll be back next week with another conversation, another first click, another person figuring it out one step at a time. Still loading, just like the rest of us. Thank you so much, Melissa.
Thank you.